The All Blacks will be in action up against France this weekend, and in this video, I'm going to be giving my All Blacks XV that I would like to see take on the French. There are some big decisions that Scott Robertson does have to make about his selection, which is why in this video, I'm not just doing one side, but in fact doing two. One with a stronger starting lineup, and then also one with a stronger bench. Of course, do let me know which one you prefer, but jumping straight into it, this first starting 15, I believe, is the strongest side that they can put out there on the field, but then with a slightly weaker bench for later on. In the match in the front row, number 1, Ethan de Groot. I still don't know whether his disciplinary issue has been dealt with, so of course if he's not available, it would be to Mighty Williams, but I do think for the amount of opportunities that Williams has had, he hasn't quite found that next level yet, which is a bit surprising seeing as he is 140 kgs and has all of the fundamentals to be absolutely incredible out there on the field. We just haven't quite seen it click with the other two in the front row yet, so I have gone with Ethan de Groot. Number 2, Cody Taylor, returning from his HIA that left him out up against the Irish, and then number 3, Tyrell Lomax. Overall, a pretty similar front row to what we have seen the All Blacks use in past games, including the last time that they did play the French. In the locks, I have gone number 4, Scott Barrett, and number 5, Tupou. Now, the 5 jersey is probably the one that you could debate whether or not to put Tupou in the starting side or leave him off the reserves, but just in this case, I decided they still needed some experience off the bench, so I started Vai, having Tupou available. Later on, in the loose forward trio, this is where we will, no matter what, see a switch for the All Blacks because there is no Sam Cane for this matchup up against France, and that means they've got some massive decisions to make. Now, I have already gone with this loose forward trio in a couple of my earlier starting 15s that I wanted to see for the All Blacks, so I'm sticking with it here. I believe at the moment it is the strongest possible trio that they could go with, and that is number 6, Samapeni Finau, number 7, moving from 8, Ardie Savea, and then number 8, Wallace Satiti. Now, do I see the All Blacks going with this loose forward trio? Not necessarily. I don't know whether or not they want to take that risk of reshuffling a few of their key players for a contest up against a world-class side like the French. But if they did, and it did gel, I think it could be a very strong one moving forward for the All Blacks in the loose forwards. But moving on to the back line, number 9, I have gone with Cam Roigard, and number 10, Damian McKenzie. Now, last week we did see Cortez Aratama under a huge amount of pressure up against the Irish. That ball wasn't coming out of the back of the ruck very quickly at all, but that was also because of how Ireland were working in those breakdowns, making it very difficult for the youngster. But in this one, I've decided to make that switch, give Roigard the chance to go head-to-head with Antoine Dupont, and that is not going to be an easy task for any of these young halfbacks New Zealand have. Now, of course, they do also have TJ Perenara in the squad, but I don't see them going back to him. They tried it in the Rugby Championship, and it wasn't that successful. Number 10, I think Damian McKenzie, after his man-of-the-match performance up against Ireland, has showed exactly what he can do at number 10, controlled the game, got his kicks over for a majority of the time, and I do think this Roigard-McKenzie combo could be extremely handy for the All Blacks. Moving into the centres, this is where I don't think we're really going to see too many changes up against France, but I do think we will see differences when it comes to that Italy game. For this one, though, Jordie Barrett, number 12, and Rieko Ioane, number 13. Barrett and McKenzie, that seemed to work at times, not too badly. I do still think Jordie Barrett's slowly finding his rhythm, though, since coming back from injury, and maybe it's this game that we will finally see Jordie Barrett reaching that peak. Rieko Ioane on the outside. The combo, it's still what they go with, but I still don't know if it's the strongest combo that the All Blacks have in terms of those centres. If you look through at all of the available players who can play 12 and who can play 13, I just don't know if this is it yet, but it is what they will go with for this match. In the back three, number 11, Caleb Clark. I do think that he had a little bit of a quiet game up against the Irish, but when he gets the ball in hand, can be extremely dangerous, decent in defence as well, so I've kept him out on the left wing. Number 14, this is where I've gone with Will Jordan. Now, I did say that this is the strongest lineup, I believe, that the All Blacks can go with. Will Jordan, yes, he's been playing brilliantly at number 15, but with the exclusion of Mark Talia, your only real other choice out on that right wing is to go back to Sevu Reece. and I just don't think Reece has been in anywhere near the form that he needs to be to secure that number 14 jersey. So I would rather go with an informed Jordan at 14, and then at number 15, this is actually where I've got Beauden Barrett. So it's a little bit of a throwback to what they did near the start of the Scott Robertson era when Jordan just first returned, when Beauden was getting opportunities at number 15. And honestly, when it comes to that back line, I don't think it will be a mile off what the All Blacks do, but that means that my bench doesn't quite have that same oomph to it that the starting lineup does. So in terms of the bench, it is number 16, Asafo Amoa, number 17, Ofa Tuangafasi, and number 18, Pasilio Tosi. I think they've found a really good combo in Pasilio Tosi and Ofa Tuangafasi. They work well together. The chemistry seems to be there, and the All Black scrum later on in the game seems to be very solid, and I believe it is down to those two. In the other forward replacements, number 19, Patrick Tuipulotu, and number 20, Sama Penifina. So far pretty similar to what they have been trying to build as their current bench. And then we move on to the backs, and this is where there is a little bit of a lack of cohesion when it comes to my selections. Number 21, Cortez Aratama. Number 22, Harry Plummer, although the last time we saw Plummer in an All Blacks kit, he only got a couple minutes, so I'd love to see him get a bit more of a run around here. And then number 23 is Anton Leonard-Brown. So overall, this is the lineup that I feel if they wanted to go with the strongest starting side with a slightly weaker bench, this is the lineup that they could consider for this game up against the French. But I did mention at the start of the video, I've got another lineup, and this lineup I believe is the strongest possible bench New Zealand can go with while also keeping a strong starting lineup for this matchup. But jumping straight into it, number 1, Tamaiti Williams, number 2, Asafo Amoa, number 3, Tyrell Lomax, the same as what they went with up against the Irish. I think Asafo Amoa was brilliant in that last performance. Cody Taylor just returning from his HIA, so I haven't thrown him in the deep end of starting up against the French, and instead see if this combination that they've got here of Williams, Amoa, and Lomax has some sort of potential moving forward. As the starters in the locking duo, this is where there are no changes compared to that first lineup I mentioned. Number 4, Scott Barrett, and number 5, Tupavai. That leaves us, of course, with Tuipulotu off the bench, who has shown in both games that they tried it that he can be a great finisher for the All Blacks. When the going gets tough, that is when Tuipulotu really digs in the heels, manages to get the team going. And there could be moments like that up against this French side. I mean, we saw them beat Japan by 40 points. Dupont was running wild. Balbari, their back line is great. Their forwards are physical. So perhaps Tuipulotu is that little bit of X factor New Zealand need off the bench to be able to try and hone that back a little bit. For this matchup in the loose forward trio, I have gone number 6, Wallace Satiti, number 7, Duplessis Karifi, and number 8, Ardie Savia. So not really making too many massive switches. I mentioned about it in my first lineup. My big concern was switching Savia to 7 and having Wallace Satiti as the number 8 is maybe that lack of time in those positions together as a side. This way, if you just make the change at number 7, you aren't really losing a huge amount in terms of where players are going to be. So Satiti still gets to play his dominant role of 6. Savia still playing that number 8 jersey. You could easily look at Peter Lakai in the starting lineup as well. And I've been a Peter Lakai guy since the start. But I just think because Duplessis Karifi has already played 2 games in recent times, captained the All Blacks XB up against Munster, and the same up against the Georgians, he at least has minutes under his belt, whereas Lakai under Scott Robertson has only really been given about 20 minutes late up against the Japanese. So Duplessis Karifi, maybe we could see him get himself a big start here up against the French, and that would be the lone change in that loose forward trio. In the 9-10 combination, this is where I've actually stuck with what they went with up against the Irish. Cortez Aratama at number 9 and number 10, Damian McKenzie. There are a few reasons for why I've done this, one of which is to have Roygaard's impact off the bench, and then also in terms of the starting lineup, I feel like now that we've seen what Ireland were able to do in the breakdowns to disrupt Cortez Aratama, I'd like to think that the All Blacks forward pack would be more aware of it if France are also going to be trying it, because we saw up against Japan, France were just throwing forwards over the top of the rucks and getting those counter-attacking plays. The All Blacks will need great ball security if they want to help out their young halfback. So I've gone with that same combo. McKenzie at 10, still I feel is the best choice in this scenario, and it also helps stack my bench just that little bit more. In terms of the midfield combo, no surprises here. Once again, the same thing. Jordie Barrett, number 12, and number 13, Rieko Ioane. There's no real obvious switch, I guess you'd say, for those midfielders at the moment. It's a combo that Razor's gone with all throughout the year when he's had it available, of course, with the exception of when Jordie Barrett was injured. But aside from that, that's the combo we're going to see quite a bit in the future as well. Number 11, this is where I've gone with Caleb Clark. Number 14, this is where I have actually put Sevu Reece, even though he hasn't had a huge amount of game time, and even though the last few performances from Reece haven't quite been up to standard, there's still a chance that number 14 would suit him quite nicely for this game. He's going to have a massive test though in front of him, more than likely going up against Belbari. But once again, this is a lineup based off making the strongest possible bench. So for that to work, Sevu Reece out. On the right wing, number 15, Will Jordan, keeping his spot, seeing as he has found great form in that fullback role. It would be risky to switch him, even though I think that might be what the All Blacks consider doing, depending on the starting lineup, like I said, that they do go with. But I would keep Will Jordan at number 15. But that brings us on to the bench. Now, on an earlier video in the week, we asked for you guys to come up with a name for the All Blacks bench, and there were a few decent suggestions out there. But I have absolutely stacked this bench for the game up against France, and that starts in the front row, number 16, Cody Taylor. Now, it isn't too often we saw that man coming off the bench over the last 24 months or so, and he is such an impact player, had some brilliant stats throughout the Rugby Championship, and also has some incredible line-out accuracy to help the All Blacks out. Now, I've started with a Safua more, and having Taylor to finish out a game could be a massive game changer if it is a close matchup. Number 17, Ofa Tuangafasi, and number 18, this is where I have once again gone with Basilio Tosi. I think that this is the combo that the All Blacks will use off their bench moving forward. It is a dangerous one. We've seen it already in a couple games, be extremely solid late, so I wouldn't want to make any switches there. Number 19, Patrick Tuipulotu, and number 20, Samapeni Finau. Now, Finau here, in terms of my bench, is probably the player that we could see switched in and out. Maybe Peter Lakai gets that spot instead. If Lakai starts, maybe you have Duplessis Karefi making his way off the bench, but still Samapeni Finau. You wouldn't think he had as strong of a game as he did up against the Japanese, with how little Scott Robertson has backed him since then. The only reason he got to come on the field up against the Irish was because of that Sam Cane head injury. Other than that, I honestly think he would have given him like 2 minutes like he did the week prior. But Finau, he could be a dangerous man to have as a super sub for this All Blacks team. Number 21, Cam Roigard. Number 22, Beauden Barrett. And number 23, Anton Lienert-Brown. It doesn't get much stronger than that when it comes to an All Blacks bench. Roigard continuing his great form after his injury. Beauden Barrett, experienced head, chuck him at fly half, chuck him at fullback, just get him out there on the field as an X-factor for the last 20 minutes. And then Lienert-Brown, he can slot into that midfield combination, playing either 12 or 13, depending on who's struggling out of the two in the starting side. But those are my two All Blacks starting lineups and reserves, ladies and gents. Like I said, the first one based off the strongest starting side with the weaker bench, and then the second one, the weaker starting side, although not really by a huge amount, and then a massive bench to close out a game. But do let me know, which lineup do you prefer? And also, if you don't prefer either, let me know your All Blacks 23 that you would love to see up against the French. It is going to be announced relatively soon who Scott Robertson has gone with, and once it is, we are going to let you know on the channel. But thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all for the next one.